Hi, Amanda from Avatar Uncovered, and welcome to our interview today with Raine. Kathy is an ex-Scientologist from Harry Palmer's Elmira Scientology mission back in the 1980s, and is here today to discuss her experience with us. Before we get going, a bit more about Avatar Uncovered if you are new to these calls. Again, my name is Amanda and I represent Avatar Uncovered. Avatar Uncovered is both an expose and an investigation into Avatar and Star's Edge. We are also a support platform for ex-members and families, friends and loved ones, in addition to providing education on cults and abusive high-control organisations such as Avatar and Scientology. A quick reminder that these interviews and all information we share here at Avatar Uncovered is not to defame, slander or harm anyone who is in Avatar or connected to Avatar. It is to bring the truth to the surface, help those who are suffering, to expose what is really going on in this organisation and the effects it has had on those who have been involved over the decades. I'd like to welcome Kathy to the call. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi.
Great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking your time and your commitment so far in getting all this information out to everyone. So thank you.
It's my pleasure.
And is there anything you want to say before we get going with the interview?
It's been a long time since I had dealings with Harry, and remembering it all it's kind of incredible. I'm thinking, wow, I went through that.
I know. Yeah. I can imagine. It brings up a lot of stuff, I can imagine, because your journey was a hell of a journey, and that doesn't just end when you leave, does it? That
right.
continues.
Right.
Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share everything with us as well.
I'm happy to. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll get going with the obvious. So how were you introduced, first of all, to Scientology? Tell us about that.
Well, it's out there, and it's kind of like the flu, I met a woman, I babysat for her, and and Scientologists think that they're great and everything's great, and they try and get you in. And so I was exposed to it, and it was right out of college. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't very happy. And that's what the first thing I tell you is it will make you happy. It'll make you perfect, blah, blah, blah. And so it kind of stuck with me. And I moved to upstate New York, and they were there too. And so I started going to Harry's Scientology Center in Elmira, and kind of got attracted there and attracted to it. And they had a lot of trappings of cults where they will suck you in. And then I happened to meet a guy there, and that added to it. And next thing you know.
Yeah. So, yeah. What position were you in? So when you were introduced to Scientology and you ended up then joining, Harry's Elmira mission, what sort of position were you in then? In terms of, were you happy with your life? And
I can't say I was happy, and I can say I was pretty unhappy. I didn't have a real happy childhood. I struggled through college, and I was all on my own, age 22, 23, 24, and I did not have a clue. Right. And these people were you didn't have to try and make friends. They came up to you and make friends with you. The first month I was there, they invited me to a wedding. I didn't go. I thought they were nuts. But it was easy. Just they would call, how are you, coming in tonight, we're gonna do this, we're having a spaghetti dinner on Saturday. And it was pretty easy to plug in at first.
Right. Okay. So it felt like it was that welcoming feeling that kind of pulled you in as well.
Yeah. And they promised things. I do remember having they do the personality test, the 200 question personality analysis, and the registrar reads it to you and says, well, you're not happy about this, you could do this better. And by the time they read through your results, you're on the floor, and they say, well, that's the bad news. The good news is Scientology can help you with all that.
Right.
It's helped me. Everybody here is happy about it, so that was a big thing too.
Okay.
I thought, well, I've tried everything else. We'll try this.
So
what could go wrong?
Tell us more about the courses at the beginning. So obviously you start with a smaller course and then work into, so what are the courses like? What did they entail and how did they make you feel?
Yeah, there was a small class. It cost $50. You could come whenever you wanted. I thought it was a little silly, like it was a little simple in places, and but it was kind of harmless. And I saw people coming and going, and I made friends with let's see, there was a woman there named Corinne. She was a really nice person, and we were friends. And I thought, well, all these people, there must be something to it. And I could have taken or leaving it. I could have taken or left it when I was done with that class, but they get you right in the chair and sell you something else.
Right. So you're then sold on to the next course quickly.
Yeah, and I would say there was a little bit of brainwashing technique going on in the first class, and then you do like your next class. I think it had like auditing or some kind of counseling processing, and with a lot of brainwashing techniques where you would do these repetitive drills for hours and just yeah.
So what were the drills like? Were they
real
like,
and it worked? I do remember one, not from the early class, but you'll go in a side room from the classroom, and you have someone is your auditor or your leader or your counselor, and they'll just walk you around the room. Touch this, thank you. Touch that, thank you. To walk over here, and you just really, for me, like I would hit a real low point, and I would get really antsy and angry, and I think it blows you through it. It's a mental phenomenon, a mental process, and then you they call it snapping. You snap, and then you start. I remember this feeling of really trusting that other person. It was almost like I gave up part of myself, gave up my own critical thinking, gave up. It's like, wow, something happened here. It got real bad, and then I got out of it, and yeah.
So it sort of created that process created some sort of dependency straight away on the person that was doing it, and you felt that was the answer rather than, we'll get on to that later towards the end. We'll go through sort of the mind control more techniques that are used, like you say, snapping. So you snap into, into that.
And then later on in the group, when I was really in, there was a lot of pressure, just total pressure. I felt flat. And squeezed and very, not myself.
Okay. So, so tell us more about going clear. So in Scientology, you mentioned as well that also was a hook for you, that whole going clear. So tell us more about that and why you felt that was a hook for you, why that was a hook for you.
Right. Well, I remember trying to read that little yellow book by L. Ron Hubbard, and people would tell me, "Oh, you're so lucky to be with Harry Palmer. He wants everybody to go clear." And I had headaches, I had physical symptoms, I had mental symptoms, and I couldn't figure it out. Life. And then there's this idea of clear. The goalpost keeps moving. First, you have to go clear. Oh, then you have to go OT3. Then you have to clear the whole planet. It wasn't just enough to want to be healthier yourself. But I used to fantasize that when the pressure was too much and I couldn't bring in any more money for Harry and Avra, for my classes and whatever, I fantasized that I would run away, save up, get a good job, save up a lot of money, and then come back and go clear. It was just, I don't know what it is. It's, it's, you can't find yourself. You can't feel your emotions. You think something's missing. And I think that's what everybody's chasing. And, that's just, now it's, I guess it's CBD oil or something.
You're going to feel
cure everything.
Very similar in terms of Avatar as well. So that's sort of like a point here, how, Scientology is helping to, you felt it was to help cure emotional pain, and to, you would recall and sort through like unpleasant past experiences. So that was sort of like the essence of
right.
Is that right?
I do remember the very first thing that got me hooked, and it was when I still lived in Connecticut. The head of the center there, he says, go back to a pleasure moment, or try and remember something from your childhood. And I remembered my father carrying me up the steps when I was 4, and how he was laughing, and I remembered his voice. And he'd been dead for a long time, and that just bowled me over.
Right.
And so I also identified Scientology with that memory.
Yeah.
Okay,
so tell me more about how you then become more deeply immersed within the group and became more part of the mission. So you've gone from, taking a few courses, becoming more hooked and, inspired by the going clear, and then you become quite deeply immersed. This is over a 4-year period. So how does that, unravel? How did that unravel for you? How did you become more deeply immersed?
Right. It's kind of like a special sauce. You're way in debt. You've isolated from your family, your friends they're not Scientologists, and for all you know, they could be what Scientology calls suppressives. And Harry and Avra always pointing out suppressives, and they won't come into the mission. They had a list outside their office of people that wouldn't give any more money, and they were suppressives, or they were in lower conditions. It's a Scientology term. So there was the debt, and then also you feel like you're part of an elite group, and you know more than other people, and then you felt lucky that you found it, and it was the only answer. There's nothing like it. It's hard to look at that now and to know at the same time that I was miserable. I had no time. I worked 3 jobs. I was way in debt because Harry and Avra and their staff had you going to the bank, lying to the bank, taking out money for the next class, and they would sell you all these classes in advance. And I lived with Scientologists. I worked with Scientologists. My spouse was a Scientologist. And it's kind of like you've gotten in your little boat, shoved off from the island, and cut the rope. I was stuck. Yeah.
And was that, as you become more and more, as you moved into the group more and more, and you were taking out more loans, you feel that was more the pressure that was getting you more immersed, continuously taking out these loans and doing more courses and all this.
Yeah.
You mentioned once as well about how the staff were told to do drills to neutralize any criticism.
It's called handling.
So tell us more about that.
Okay. It's so you try and talk to somebody about Scientology, and they say, oh, I've heard of that, or they say, oh, Scientology, and then you're supposed to say, oh, what have you heard? And they say, well, I've heard that L. Ron Hubbard is a nut. And then you just say, well, that's interesting. I've never heard that, and I've never seen that. I don't remember the handles. I just remember that they drilled you over and over, so you're more and more comfortable with when they say, oh, Scientology, they put a rattlesnake in some reporter's mailbox, stuff like that. So,
Yeah, and that was something that the staff were kind of trained to do as well. Is that correct?
yes, yeah, and we would actually, I think every Saturday morning, a half an hour before classes start, we had to go in and do this training for that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And just a bit more about, the trainings and exercises and how it got more as you become different, as you got more immersed. So tell us about the ethics officer and what was their role. So what was ethics officer and their role?
Yeah, well, in life, you bump along, you have ups and downs. I remember I was coming back from one of my 3 jobs at the time. It was like 5 in the morning. I had just done inventory all night long in Pennsylvania. We were in a crew, and I came back and I hit a patch of ice, and I got into the mission. I said, I can't come in today. I'm really exhausted. I just had a car accident. I said, well, you had a car accident and you screwed up, and that means that you have done something wrong, that you have overts or whatever. And so they called Harry on the phone, and he said, oh, no, she needs to take this class and buy this course, and it's lucky that we're here to save her. And it's it just, at times, you've really felt stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was ethics?
Oh, ethics. I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying
That's
to
okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well,
You had such a lot happen and so much going on. So
well, that's part of ethics. Is if you rebel or you hit a bump or you need time for yourself, you're stuck with the group. And if you want to go off and or you get upset or something, they say, well, you need to go into ethics, because otherwise if you hadn't done something bad somewhere, or maybe you thought a bad thought about us or something, it reflects back on you. And because you don't have ethics, it's your fault that you're mad at us. So I remember once, my husband was in a meeting in the other room from the classroom. I was in the classroom, and I heard them discussing something, and I was terrified that they were going to split us up, that they were going to do some kind of a ethics evaluation. I think it's called a ComEv, and it wasn't, but I was just paranoid. Yeah, and they used ethics a lot to try and get you to bring in more money for the class and for counseling. So,
right. Okay. And I read, I think that ethics was also where you had to, you would go away and you'd have to write over and over again all the things that you have done. And is that correct, in the past? And
those are overts, like sins.
Yeah.
And I didn't get too far with that. But when you're in auditing, when you're in counseling, the expensive stuff, and you're with a professional auditor, they will ask you, and I guess you're supposed to dig up past sins and stuff. I just made that stuff up. I couldn't come up with past lives, but not under pressure like that. So, yeah. And they forced my girlfriend Corinne out because her boyfriend wouldn't bring in any more money. So his ethics, I said, your ethics are out because you're not contributing to the group. And then they told my friend Corinne to, you have to leave him, or you won't go clear because he'll threaten you. And it will threaten, his lower condition will threaten your eternal being.
Right. Okay. So there was that was going to go on to that point. So there was a lot of control with relationships from Harry.
Oh my God! Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So they would have some influence over whether people come together, split up. And
they told my husband and I that we shouldn't have children right away, and they said, "Well, she's not ready to have children." Blah blah blah. I don't know what that was from, but when you have children, you kind of have to prioritize. You have to spend your money on them. You have to give them time. I saw one couple with a small child, and that just terrified me because I know they were working a lot of jobs and coming to the mission. And I remember when I got out, when we finally quit and never went back, I was driving down the road to my house and I didn't have any place to be. And it just felt like I had jumped off a building. I was free. And it felt very strange. I didn't know how to deal with it.
Right, okay.
Great. I got used to it.
Yeah, so you got used to that whole, being in the group and this whole craziness, ridiculous act.
Once I got out, it felt so good.
Yeah.
Finally.
We'll get that a bit later about,
Sure.
how you left or, tried to leave. So just before we get into a bit more about how Harry and Avra run their mission, I mean, we've touched on bits of it, but we'll go a bit deeper. And there's going to be some hopping around because you had quite a journey and a lot of things happened. We're trying to cover a lot of things. But first of all, I just want to get into, when Harry talks about his connection to Scientology, if it's ever talked about, these days, he acts as though he kind of dipped his toe in it, and... but actually, Harry was considered a bit of a guru himself within your mission. Is that correct? I mean, I've read before that quite a few of you idolized him, and he wanted that, people to idolize him, and he was seen a bit of a messiah. So just tell me a bit more about how people saw Harry Palmer within.
Right. Harry was at the top. He was kind of like Oz behind the curtain. And although there was no doubt that he was running everything, but I do remember for a long time I thought Harry cares about me. Harry wants the best, and if one of his staff was like browbeating me to get money out of me, I would think, well, if Harry knew about this, he wouldn't stand for it. And I remember telling that to Margie once. She was one of the main, I know you've interviewed her, she was one of the main registrar staff members to get money out of people. And I just snapped. I had it. And I said, well, I'm going to tell Harry that you're treating me this way. And she said, oh, you think so? She goes, I have to get people signed into these classes for him. I have a deadline. I have a quota, and Harry wants your butt in that classroom. And I began to see that he was using us a lot. He was using us for his own private companies. He was just squeezing us dry for classes that we had to buy in the future. And who knows when we get to them. If someone had bought their entire, they call it the bridge to higher freedom, you get to clear and then you get to OT. If someone had bought all that and didn't need to pay any more money, oops, they'd have an ethics problem, and then they'd have to use up that money on account. They'd have to use it towards very expensive auditing, use it all up, and then have to start buying their bridge all over again. No, he was big in Scientology. He ran that center for a long time. He did it the way he wanted to. And the staff was paid like 50 cents dollar an hour maybe. And he had quite a pot of gold.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah.
But quite a few people kind of did worship him in a way.
Yeah. There was another staff member, is Marianne, and Marianne Helsing, and she says, well, Harry is God.
Yeah.
Like, how did we get so lucky to find God? So
it's quite interesting again how you. Sorry, continue.
Well, he would have lectures every Friday night, and they went through a confetti period where he'd walk into the room and they'd throw confetti, and it was quite a mess. And he would try and do this humble shit, It's like, oh shucks, oh gee, guys, you really shouldn't fuss, but you could see it. I was afraid of everybody there, but I don't know, Harry, you couldn't, we didn't see much of him. It's because he would come in, be in his office a couple hours, and then go.
Right.
But you'd see him Fridays, and the women, the staff members, were just, they were his minions.
Right. Okay.
They did all his dirty work.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I'll get on to there's a few things I'll pull out from there. So to everyone who's listening,
I can imagine
a few, because there's quite a lot of things that I want to pull out of that. But before I do, I mean, you mentioned also about how, at birthdays and, Harry's birthdays and the amount of money that was asked to donate.
Oh, yeah.
You're asked to donate even in gold. So just tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. You could never catch up. If you had any extra money, they'd sniff it out. And at Christmas, you'd have to donate hundreds of dollars just for presents for everybody, and then a separate couple hundred for Harry's present. And I remember one time he opened a present. We rarely saw this, but I do remember one time he did it, and it was gold, and he goes, "Oh, great, more gold." And I thought, I just worked 20 hours for that, and I could have used it to pay bills or buy food. And he had an ammo case. He brought it in for a photo shoot once. It was probably, a small ammo case, and he could barely lift it. He's a strong guy. It was full of gold.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, this has been said by quite a lot of people. So because some people listening to this may be quite shocked by that, by the kind of the image that Harry Palmer gives of, not caring about money and not having money, and but I know what you've shared has been shared in statements and by multiple people that were within the mission. I mean, did you, if you don't mind me asking, at that stage, did you not then onwards from then, and this may seem like an obvious question to those that may be listening and not been in a cult, I sort of, for us, it may be different that have, like why we're not questioning at that stage why we are doing all these crazy hours and handing all this money over to someone who blatantly does love money. Why not leave then? So, which again, I say some people think is an obvious thing to ask, but you're not really thinking the same way as someone that's not in a cult at that stage. So
exactly.
What are your feelings on that?
Well, I was isolated. Like I said, we were all isolated. And then like Scientology, it's just got all these little traps. Like you get into the studies, the meaning, and I know when I look at it, I go, wow, I did think that was a little crazy back then, but I don't know, you put up with a lot, and it just because you think it's going to pay off, and you've invested so much, you don't want to act like, you're like you made a big mistake, or if you run off and you lose all your money, I don't know, it's like this car is going over the hill, but I paid good money for it, so I'm not jumping out. Yeah. And like I said, everyone else is acting like, or at least the top people are acting like, we know what we're doing, we're in control, this is for your own good.
Yeah.
And then I do think my mind was in an altered state.
Yeah.
We were in training, doing those exercises a lot. There was TRs where you have to sit in a chair and stare at somebody.
And they were repetitive, aren't they? So they were
very
hypnotic, similar to what we have in Avatar, which is like the source list and the reality creation list, where you sit opposite each other, and you're doing the same exercise over and over again, sometimes days at a time. I mean, that's similar to what you had in Scientology. So
Right.
people don't see that, it's a type of brainwashing which you feel is for your own good, but really, like you say, it's putting you in an altered state.
Right. And there's like little carrots dangling out there. I remember a friend of mine in Scientology, and his biggest goal in life, he dearly wanted to go exterior. It's kind of like when your spirit leaves your body and you can see yourself from. And I said, why do you care? He thought, and that's what he wanted. And I wanted to go clear where I didn't have any more headaches, and where I didn't, where I felt worthwhile, and you just these little traps all over the place.
And I suppose they know your vulnerabilities as well, like what is keeping you there, because it is kind of different for everyone. Like you have, like you say, the main essence of it going clear, or helping the planet go clear and helping humanity, but there's always those things that are very personal to you, that they know every detail of your life and weaknesses, that if you even hint about questioning or leaving or diverting, then that's used straight back onto you.
Yeah.
Would you say that's sort of similar with?
Definitely. Yeah, I remember. I remember once my husband would try and work extra jobs. He cut pulpwood out by himself in the middle of a state forest with a chainsaw and a tractor. And one day his watch stopped, and he's just working along, and he was late, and they called and they said, "Where is your husband?" Said, "Well, he should be there, isn't he?" "No, he's." And I was very upset, because I thought he had hurt himself. And my coworker, also Scientologist, was going to take me out trying to find his work spot. And just before we left, he went to call his wife at the Scientology center, and he said, "Well, we're going out to look for Tom." "Oh, he's here." They never called me. And then I got in trouble because it was my fault that I made him late somehow. Right. Yeah. And it's funny. You don't even know what you do sometimes, but you know you've done it.
Well, I suppose that reminds me of the similarities again in Avatar, because brought out of the whole, sort of transgressions or something that you've done that's created something to happen, so for, like, in your instance, you have done something in your world to create your husband's watch from stopping, made him late, so then you were the source. So
and a normal person wouldn't take that BS.
No,
it's like a lot stops, I don't know, exactly. It's kind of a perverse magic. It was like you're making your own little universe. Pigs can fly as long as you close your eyes and don't look too hard.
But then again, what is not seen, and what is not seen a lot when we talk, we discuss cults, and how people just see the craziness, the awful stories, the separation of families and friends, entities or aliens or whatever, but they're not seeing the process that you have undergone to get to the stage of adopting those beliefs, which is a long process. And it's, again, we go back to talking about those brainwashing techniques, and when you're slowly handing over your autonomy and your psyche over to someone else, and you more and more take on that things are your fault and your responsibility over a slow process. But by the time you get to your stage, or someone that's deeply immersed, that becomes quite extreme, and you can't see it. A bit like an abusive relationship. Why can't they see why they are trapped with that person? It's crazy. It's obvious.
Exactly.
They can't.
Exactly. And everybody, I think, we're humans. Everybody does have, to a certain point, they just accept something. It's like, yes, I'm going to go to college and spend $250,000, and they don't look at the other end. Well, don't you think you have to pay this back, or whatever? Or you go in the military and you do boot camp for 18 hours a day. It's not as extreme as mind control, destructive mind control cults, but still, it's there.
Yeah.
And but a lot of cults, they have this similar mind control and the love bombing, and
Well, they've adopted it. They've adopted their techniques from all the things within society. So, peer pressure, like you say, wanting to be like someone above you, peer pressure, accepting what's given to you, not wanting to create a fuss, not wanting, all those side of things as well are used within a cult. And there's so many different things, playing on your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities and being able to get in your mind and twist something that is dear to you and turn it into something else. That we do this and we do this in life sometimes.
Yeah. Yes, we do. And it's funny, when someone, I never did this, but when someone first becomes a vegan or whatever, it's like, some people tend to like, oh, well, no, I don't want to eat that cupcake. That's bad for you. Or so when a bunch of Scientologists would get together, we would all talk the same jargon, the same lingo. And if something came up, like an item on the news, we would interpret that through Scientology glasses.
Yeah.
We'd say like, oh, their ethics are out, or oh, they're and so like the difficult things in life, you don't have to sit and smack your head. You can explain them all away with Scientology.
Yeah, and I've heard that mentioned by a well-known cult expert as well. Like, it's not so much that people can't think for themselves. It's that they're thinking through a whole new lens, a whole new structure, which is why when someone leaves a cult and if they were just to go to a therapist, it's very challenging for a therapist even to get to get to the root of something that's going on for someone that's left a cult. But if they unravel that whole structure, they break down that whole structure that was built up in the cult, the whole belief system, then they can get more to the issues because they've broken away at that, that they've pulled away that lens to that person.
I was very upset when it all came down, and I saw it for what it was, and I realized that Harry had put me in debt with no problem, and he got to keep all the money. He lied. I was very angry for quite a few months. I had help. I read books and articles, and I think I deprogrammed quite a bit, but and then it was great being out. But I was quite angry for a while. It's like, yeah.
I can imagine, and I think people have the right to be angry because that's something that's suppressed in the cult as well. It's not can't be angry because there's something going on with you, but it's like people describe it as like a sort of rape, like really, on your being, your soul, without zero remorse whatsoever. But we'll get into that a bit more in a bit. I'll just go a bit more into the practices within Harry and Avra's mission. First of all, you mentioned, again, it seems like, you were discussing ethics. That's been discussed a few times. So that was kind of like a control thing in terms of controlling people if they were doing something that wasn't bringing money in or doing what Harry and Avra wanted. Then it seems to be used. I mean, would you say that's true?
Oh, yeah. They wanted your life. If you had any spare time, you had to pass out flyers or questionnaires. You had to sell a book. You had to bring people in. That's kind of where I knew that I had a problem, was I never wanted to bring a person in and subject them to this cult.
Right.
Yeah. And, Harry and Avra and the staff would be like, oh, how many books did you sell this week? 0. Okay. And like these classes, you had to get out and sell a book, or every time we came into the center, there was a receptionist selling you a book. It was just very expensive.
Yeah.
And
Okay, and I mean, let's go in a bit more into, we've touched on it, a bit more into the financial pressure, but also the amount of debt you got into, because yours debt quite significant, and people might read that now in 2019, but this was back in the mid-80s, so you got up to $60,000 worth of debt, which would have been massive debt, massive.
It was massive. It's still a chunk today. I mean, I could do a lot with $60,000.
Yeah.
But back then, this was in the 80s, and I took out bank loans. The interest rates were quite high, like 15, 16% was average. It was normal. And so banks were happy to give you money if you paid. And so, let's see, I guess once I moved to Elmira, my husband, my boyfriend at the time, we moved in together probably 6 months after I first joined the group. And then I was committed because I had moved from Ithaca to Elmira to take classes, and I worked with Scientologists, and so I was supposed to buy my bridge, and they were going to help me finance it, and they would direct me, the staff would direct me to banks. So they said, just get bank loans. You can get bank loans or get a credit card. And then there was tricks. They'd say, well, hit a whole bunch of banks at once, and then they won't know that you're asking for money. They won't see it on your credit record. Or lie about your income, make it up. I saw them direct a staff. No, I saw the staff direct a student to fake his tax return. And anything you did to game the system and bring them money was fine. It was fine. And we were always terrified of being audited on our taxes because we just deducted these donations. And I know some people did get audited. I was lucky. So there was a deadline. I think it was Thursday at 2. Was it Friday at 2? When you had to have all your money in, and Harry and Avra would say, well, you're not flowing us any power if you're not paying, if you're not buying classes. We're not able to pay your husband his $50 a week or whatever, his paycheck. And there was a lot of pressure. Can you borrow money from this person? Can you get them to co-sign? And then we had my work crew. We had a very serious car accident, and I was given an insurance recovery, an award of I think it was $30,000. I got to keep maybe $27,000 or something out of $40,000, and so I paid off a couple credit cards, and then the staff brought me in and they said, we want the rest of that money.
Right.
You're going to have to take those credit cards out again. So eventually I got up to $60,000. I remember
again, so 60,000 again.
No, just total. I got up to 40, and then I paid off, and then
and you paid it off, and
then or loan money to somebody else so he could take a class, and then he took off with my money. Well, he took off owing me, but I remember we were engaged, my husband and I, and then I had my bridge, and that's when Harry decided to sell the upper levels. And he was not allowed to do that with the level church he was. I know this for a fact. And I know that Scientology came down, sent a representative down, and he lied to them. They wiped off the auditing board. No, we don't make hardly any money here. We wouldn't keep it ourselves. We'd, give you your cut. But he was hoarding it all. And then, so just as we were getting married, looking forward to a future, then they regged me. They tried to sell me more classes. And I was just ready to throw up. And I did it. I bought the classes. I took out more loans. But I would get behind, and then if I had any credit left on a credit card, I would use that to pay other bills. Or I'd let something go 2 months behind, and then I'd try and catch up on it. It was very difficult, a lot of pressure.
And that's the OT levels, isn't it? So the operation levels, which are quite high in Scientology.
They're very expensive. Oh, yeah, yeah.
in a higher level. So that's, yeah. Adds another level of craziness as well, I think.
I know.
And
I should have saved my money and just read the LA Times. They had OT3 in there.
so you mentioned just a couple of things there. You mentioned that you loaned money as well to people to do classes as well.
After I got my insurance money,
Yeah.
I did. There was this kid I worked with, and actually that was arranged by Harry's staff. They said, "You have a little extra money here, loan it to so and so he can take his next class."
Right. And you never got that money?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
I know people that blew their entire family inheritance. I know several people. Yeah. Yeah.
What did they blow it on? Like in loaning money, courses?
Oh no, in buying classes, buying auditing, buying classes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, as soon as they could sniff you had money, it was gone.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Shouldn't laugh, but yeah. So you mentioned just quickly as well here, you mentioned somewhere that at one stage you did not believe the control and pressure was coming from Harry. You believed, most of it was coming from the staff, but really they were under intense pressure to get the money in.
Yeah.
They were frightened as well, some of Harry and Avra. Just a bit more about that.
Well, he seemed so relaxed. He'd come in because he didn't do any work. And I thought, there's poor Linda in the basement with a printing machine that's always breaking down, and she's printing out these questionnaires that we hand out. And I thought, why are people working their buns off here? What's the fire? Then we had one guy, he was a junk car. He would travel all around, and he would go out farther and farther to sell areas that he hadn't been to yet. He was supposed to sell books, and a lot of times he just I remember once he got in trouble for giving them away or for selling them for like 50 cents just to get someone to buy the book. Staff was working big hours, and then they were asked to work more. I think my husband's regular hours were supposed to be like 1 to 9, and then he could come in the morning to do his own coursework if he wanted to, but then they would make him work more and more.
Right. Yeah. And that was next to nothing, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Slave labor.
Yeah.
Really.
Definitely. Close the church.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's how they justify.
Right.
I mean, I did read, actually, I was reading through, I'll go into this a bit towards the end, reading through the Elmira press, the press coverage you had over 5 days, which every time I read that, I get more from it. I have to say, to those listening to me, it just sounds like Avatar for those that have been immersed.
I'm so glad you did that.
Yeah, so it's very, very insightful.
Documentation, and it helped us it helped us put some distance. And I think Harry saw for once that, wow, maybe my actions do have
consequences.
But he looked really angry.
Yeah. And it mentions in there that we're just talking about, with the pressure. Margie mentions about how, the pressure that she got as a staff member, and how she was booted out because she was not mean enough. And so, that role took being mean and kind of
she wasn't the top or the second meanest.
Yeah, exactly. And then she was replaced by someone that was meaner because it took to be successful and get money out of people.
Yeah.
And a bit more about what sort of, we've spoken a lot about Harry, but what did you see in terms of Avra as well and her role in the mission?
She was great.
How you viewed her, how it was run by her.
She would try and be sweet, but I was terrified of her. I will always try and sneak by her without, making eye contact or anything, but she would stop you and I, she could. She's like a dog that will wag its tail but bite you at the same time.
Right.
Whenever I brought in money, she'd say, "Oh, Kathy, you are the best at getting loans. You're my favorite student." And then one day, like, we had this box of chocolates. Somebody bought us chocolates, and I wanted a second chocolate. And she got all upset that I would take a second chocolate. And then she realized she was being kind of a jerk about it. And she goes, "Well, Kathy, were you afraid that I was going to yell at you?" I said, "Yeah, I guess." And she goes, "Well, see, you pulled it in then, and that's what caused me to yell at you."
Right.
So, yeah.
So you created her, you caused her to yell.
To be a jerk. I caused her to yell. I know. I remember she had this giant ring, and she wore it to my wedding. My family saw it, and she would tell everybody it was a cubic zirconia, but it was a diamond. She had her own jeweler come by, and so we bought a lot of jewelry for Christmas presents for them.
Yeah. So was she in the classrooms with you? Like, what was sort of her role?
Not really. She kind of was in charge of the staff. She would make sure that you were working. Once in a while, she'd pop into the classroom and pretend that she was helping. And I guess she just kept an eye out for Harry, because Harry, geez, I like I said, he just showed up a couple hours, and then he would take off. And there was another staff member that lived close to them, so she would drive Avra home a lot, and because Avra didn't drive. And then I think this same poor staff person had to teach her how to drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just before we move on to how the whole thing ended and the whole lawsuit with Scientology and the move to Avatar and how you managed to get out, what was your life like at this stage? So you'd obviously moved into Scientology with the hope of improving your life, but what actually was the reality of your life at this stage, or the relationship with your family and friends, the hours you were working, etc., your emotional state, all of
Yeah. I had absolutely no time to myself. I had no time with my husband. I never saw my family. I remember my grandmother came to one of the local towns to have a triple bypass that had a good hospital, and I didn't spend much time with her or my mother. I couldn't get away for anything. You had to work. I was working 3 jobs. My husband and I never went on dates. Anything we did was at the mission, and it was like for the effort. Like we had to write letters, we had to sell books, we had to pass things out, and then I was so much in debt that I had I was waitressing, and then I also was I had a desk job, but it didn't pay much, and then I sold ticket books. That's the crew that I had the car accident with, and that was pretty big money. But everyone on that crew, we made a lot of money. We were all Harry's students, and he got all that money. It was crazy. And when the group broke up, I look back and I'm thinking, I don't know if I would have made it another year. It was just, it was too much.
Was a bit of a godsend that the whole thing broke up.
Right.
So, I mean, and I read somewhere as well, it was in the Elmira press articles, that the group was always considered more important than family and friends.
Right. I remember Avra saying, and I think I mentioned this, that says, well, your family, they don't want you to be in Scientology. They don't want you to improve yourself. They're suppressives, and you've got to separate from them. And if you were, I see it now that your family's going to question you. They're like, how come you have to work 3 jobs? How come we can never see you? How come you're having this tiny little wedding and Harry and Avra showing up wearing expensive shoes and big fat diamond rings? Yeah.
So they're going to question you naturally because they love you and care about
Right.
you. But that's obviously,
right.
but obviously they create that separation, that disconnection, so that influence isn't on you. If you mean,
It was total control. Control.
Yeah. So you
felt. And then, well, if you ever thought of leaving, you couldn't leave your spouse behind. When I did finally leave, I told Tom, I said, you can do what you have to do, but I can't go back there. I'm not going back.
No.
And then he said that he would leave too, and I'm, yay, sounds good.
But you had struggled up to then, hadn't you? Because I read a few times, which made me feel really sad, that you were always in fear of losing your husband. Like that was kind of kept hanging.
And I wasn't the only person there that they were afraid that their spouse wouldn't leave. And then everybody, once it started to crumble, it really fell of its own weight.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the first time I left, my husband was still, I left twice. And my husband was still kind of, this was after Avatar. And so my husband was really only doing work for Harry at his property. They didn't need the big staff at the mission anymore. So I felt sad that he was still there and I had left. But eventually I went back and then I left for good.
Right, okay. So let's just move into that now then, when the whole thing does collapse and you manage to move, you manage to get out, you manage to leave.
Yeah, it was
what happened? So, I mean, we've heard this many times, but it's always good to keep hearing it. So, when the whole thing collapsed and Harry got in trouble with Scientology for both selling the higher levels that he wasn't meant to be selling, but also the money wasn't getting to Scientology.
Well, you have these little Church of Scientology, you have these little missions, and they can only sell to clear. And then when you hit clear, you're supposed to travel to one of the big centers and then give them all your money. Right. But Harry started selling, and I know somebody that left because of that, because he thought, Harry's not supposed to be doing this. That's out ethics. I'm leaving. So, and then I do know there was a big bustle at the mission. Was a big dust up that we had to hide things and clean things up because some Scientology higher ups were coming to inspect and talk to Harry about see what was going on. And I remember they wiped out the schedule board for auditing to show that we weren't taking in any money, but we were.
Right.
So yeah. And then my husband told me this story at the time, and he reminded me he was working at Harry's at property, and Harry was there, and he says, I've been checking out this little process, there's this thing I found in a book from the ancient whatevers, and it's quite interesting, and you can get spiritually enlightened through this, and Tom, my husband's like, oh, interesting, and then he broke out the Avatar. So we're not selling Scientology anymore. We're selling this process. It'll take you straight to clear. And they did it on the staff. And then my husband said, like later that day, he said, so Harry, is this the thing you were telling me about? And Harry's like, oh no, Tom, no, this is something totally different. And my husband had the feeling that he was looking at him to see if Harry was looking at my husband as he was explaining that this isn't what I was talking about, he said. And he said Harry was looking at him to see if he was buying it.
So it was like the ancient process he had mentioned,
yes.
which is really interesting because, as we've discovered more and more about picking apart Avatar over the years. It is the part, the core of it. Not now because there's so many parts that have been added to it and different levels. You know, it really is kind of like just a cover for a repackage of Scientology as you start to unpick exercises and the policies, and you know, with ethics, there's an ethics. People don't see that who are lower down in Avatar, but there's, you know, the whole thing basically. I'll go into it more about maybe with you sometimes.
When Avatar supposedly sprung out of Harry's head, it was a simple thing. It was a simple thing, and then he created a pack, and then he wrote bulletins, and we thought it was all love and light, but in one of the bulletins, it was like slamming something. I can't remember what it was, but a friend of mine said, you know, this sounds like L. Ron Hubbard. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's interesting, as we discover, we've had these interviews, and I've been doing quite a lot of research to the operation returns, so that OT levels. And so I've dived into some of those, because they used to be secret materials, but now they're not. Right. You know, they first were published on WikiLeaks, and I was like, oh God, this is just a reality creation list, which is in Avatar. So he's obviously, because they were top secret at the time, those higher levels, he's taken parts of those OT levels and put them into Avatar with the hope that no one's ever going to find out details of those higher levels. The same with the whole entities, you know, which is the Thetans in Scientology.
Bizarre. Someone that lies so much and believes his own lies, isn't he ever worried? I guess he's not. He doesn't care. And if enough people believe him, but it's creepy.
Well, they say, you know, the type that show no remorse and can just ruin people's lives don't have that same fear factor we have, or that same like kind of I don't know. I saw someone at one time who specialised in cults had a discussion with this person specialised in cults, and said that, you know, some people like that, I hate saying it's on camera, that personality type have to be stopped. They don't know how to stop themselves because they don't have the conscience that the people who are conning and ripping off have. So they pull in and play on those that have a very strong conscience and empathy and that desire to be a good and better person, and actually they don't have that, and they're never going to have that. They don't have empathy. They don't have that.
But then they've got, I have this really good thing called Clear, or called Avatar, and I can do anything I want to you, because once you get this, it will all be worthwhile. I thought my life was shit, and I thought if Harry knew how awful this has made my life, that he would fix it. He would, he'd lower his prices, or he'd, but, and then when he walks away, we had a meeting with him toward the end, because
I was going to say that. So let's move on to what you're going to talk about there, about how you still really put him in this kind of like, wow, Harry, certain light towards the end even. But really, what was it like when everything fell apart? And you say you then called this meeting. So what was the reality rather than what the image that you had of?
Yeah, I think he was trying to do damage control, because people were asking for their money back. Right. I had asked for mine early on, and they said, tough luck. We don't have it anymore. We wish we did. Blah blah blah. So we had this meeting, and a lot of people came, and several people blew off at him, and I'm like, huh. But we were, for the most part, we were still polite, and he gave us this sob story about someone that killed his dog, and that wasn't true. And then he said something else, I don't know what it was, but one of the men knew for a fact that it wasn't true. He goes, that's not true. And Harry goes, oh yes, Dick, it is true. And so Dick got up to walk out, and Harry calmed him down, made him sit down. It was just strange. And then we, after the meeting, he was giving people some money back, like half of what they had on account. And
so this is when obviously that he lost the rights for Scientology. So the money that you gave him had never gone to Scientology. So it was supposed to be kept on account with him. And then he then is moving over to Avatar and is refusing to give people back their money that is held on account that you believed was kept for future Scientology courses.
Exactly. And when you graduated a course and you took your next course, they would act like, yes, okay, we're releasing your money on account for this next course, and that will pay the staff for whatever. But, you know, he owned the building. He owned several buildings. He owned a satellite dish company, and we worked for him for people worked for him for nothing or very low wages. And it was tough at the end. It was tough. People got divorced. People went bankrupt. The only reason I didn't go bankrupt was that my husband helped me pay my bills.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is again going on to the articles. So, obviously this is all broken down. He moves into Avatar, makes a lot of money as well, apparently in the first year. But no one sees that money again back in Elmira. So he's making all this money. No one sees that back in Elmira. And then for everyone that's listening to this, it's worth going to read those newspaper articles because there's so much detail in there. I'm not going to be able to cover in this interview. I wish I could go through every single piece because it's so.
My favorite part is where he tries to answer at the end, and he tries to.
Yeah, and that's the part I want to mention.
I don't know why they hate me.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I know, like through Avatar, one of the biggest sins is to be a victim of your own circumstance. But in that whole part, Harry Palmer clearly plays a victim, that he's a victim of an extortion campaign from Scientology and from all of you that worked for him and slaved away at him. And just for everyone, again, is listening at home, pretty much everyone left at that time. I think there was only two people that moved on. So it's like, how can pretty much the whole of his followers and staff lying and have an extortion campaign?
He lies, and it's still amazing. I'm thinking, like, how does he believe that? And I guess it's just true that I do consider him a psychopath. He just doesn't have the empathy. He's missing something.
Yeah, because he, as is highlighted by the journalist, in that he showed great remorse for his dog, but zero remorse for people that he's had. Right. And to this day, there's still no comment. And everything that we've been posting recently about mental health in Avatar and people that are really struggling, losing people, losing friends and family, all their money, and there's zero comment and zero remorse. Hopefully people will start to see the actions of Harry Palmer and also Avra rather than just what the whole facade and what's come out of their mouth over the decade.
When I first came to the mission, and there was that list of suppressives, of the people that were in lower conditions, and my friend Corinne was on there, and her boyfriend, and they were forced to separate. They wouldn't separate. She was pregnant at the time, and they left and they went to Florida, but the pressure they separated after that. She gave her daughter up for adoption.
Gosh.
I should have run, but I stayed. Yeah,
but of course,
I'm happy.
Stuff is our fault, even if they break up relationships. But if it's Harry Palmer's dog, it's a different story.
Right.
Or
I think he knew the truth on that dog too.
Yeah,
it was. I think it was shot for running deer.
For running deer. Yeah. Later it was found out. Anyway, so let's just move on from that. I mean, we could go on and on about that, and we'll be doing another hour. So for everyone that's listening, I'll put all that clearer on the website. So it will go on the blog, obviously on YouTube and on the Facebook page, and then I'm going to start now filling out the Scientology section on the website. So, the past violations in Scientology and the whole history, because I haven't so much, because there's just been so much to cover. So I've had to now start putting it a bit at a time. So I'll put all of that up there for people to explore, and maybe you and I can explore all of this a bit further in future videos and posts for people to see, because it helps, I think, especially those that have left and who are trying to come to terms with all this and unravel it all, those especially that have been very hurt within this organisation. But before we kind of bring the interview for a close, how was it when you left? Like, just tell us more about leaving, finally leaving, and just how you got your life back, so what that process was like, and your discovery of mind control cults and brainwashing and snapping and the whole process. So just tell us more about the journey of recovery, leaving in recovery.
Yeah, when I decided to leave, I was afraid that my husband wouldn't leave with me, and I was afraid to talk to him about it. And I just knew that I wasn't going back, and I told him, and I said, you can do what you want, but I can't go back. And he said he would leave too. He more or less faded away. I stomped out, but and I started doing a lot of reading to deprogram. I didn't know what happened to me, and I spent days just crying. I was so upset and I was angry, and luckily I found a book called Snapping, and I also connected with a man at Cornell that was into cult awareness. He was in the cult awareness network, and I wanted people to join in a lawsuit. It didn't go too far, but we moved. I still worked with some of the ex-Scientologists because I made a lot of money. I paid off my loans. Here I am, 32, 33, finally having a child, living in a trailer, no savings. It took a long time I feel like being in Scientology with Harry set me back a decade. And I know people that went bankrupt and didn't make it. Their marriages collapsed. It was a mess. It was a mess. My husband and a couple staff members went through the labor board to see if they could get some back wages, or at least just get caught up to minimum wage. And I believe we ran into Harry's accountant, and he could talk now because Harry was in Florida. And he said, that guy had a fortune. And he said he only handled the checks. And we knew that we didn't give Harry a lot of money in checks. I said, do you know how much cash he had? He says, oh, yeah, I can imagine he had a lot of cash.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A bit more about, so you were saying, you said somewhere that you didn't believe mind control was really real, but you discovered that it was at the end of the journey.
I didn't hear you.
No, I said you mentioned somewhere that mind control wasn't real, that you didn't want to believe that mind control was real, but you'd come to discover that mind control was real.
Yeah. At the end, I had to look at everything, and I had to think of how I fell into these little traps, and how it changed and you look out and you see what the world is like, but when you have your own little world and it's all Scientologists, and then it comes back in, and it just looks like a loop, and you're caught up in it. When I was out, I looked back, I thought, wow, that was a warning sign. Wow, that was, I don't know. But all these things, so many pressures at once, and so many techniques at once. And then when you get out, you're just unpacking it. I knew people that couldn't deal with it. I knew one guy, he was on staff, and he was angry for 1 week. And then after that, he couldn't deal with it anymore. He went back to avoidance, denial, and maybe the anger would have destroyed him. I don't know. But
so they can't process that the experience they've had. You can't come across that as well. Some people can, but that's why I always advise people to get some sort of help or support by a cult expert or a therapist that understands cults, because it's not just understanding. A lot of us come out in a psychological mess, as well. Not just addressing that part of it, is addressing everything the cult has built around your life. The whole belief structure that a cult puts in place, and it's breaking down that whole structure.
Go along with it.
Yeah, before you can even get to the other issues. So I always strongly suggest that. I mean, I know that was amazing for me, because you quite quickly as well can snap out of the whole it's your fault. And, because when you see how they do it, it's not. It's like saying someone's in an abusive relationship and it's their fault.
Right. I do think when we projected onto Harry that he was kind and loving and godlike and gentle, really that was what we pulled out of ourselves. That's what we pulled out of our own hearts. And so it came from us, not from him. And I don't think for a second that he took the goodness out of his heart and looked at us that way. I think we were dollar signs.
Yeah. I mean, I know now he's really put on a pedestal as a guru. You have to worship him. In Avatar, or you don't stay in the, if you're deeper in the group. It is about Harry and Avra's mission, and people see Avra as angelic and Harry as, a very high level of consciousness. So people idolize both Harry and Avra and try and reach Harry and Avra, which I in Scientology that would have been more Ron Hubbard,
right,
at the time, who is. I mean, I don't know much about. I've not been in Scientology, but I know
it's interesting that
you've got a picture of Ron Hubbard, and straight away you're encouraged to idolize.
I can't imagine if I sat with L. Ron Hubbard in a room for a couple of days, I wouldn't think he was a nut. And now that I think about it, Harry had all these people between him and the public. Maybe he was afraid that his facade would crack, or he had other people lying for him.
It's the same now. He has a very tight inner circle of women, like he did in Scientology, and then there's a real hierarchy. So it's like to get to Harry, and then if you do get to Harry, then that's like, the most amazing thing that can happen to you if you have a dinner with him. And so that, I have to say, it creates a huge gap between him and you. So, but that's another story. So just tying up with you, I mean, what would you like to say to people? Is there anything you'd like to say to people? Anything else you'd like to add to this interview before we tie up?
It's never too late to get out. It's never too late to change your mind. It's never too late to look deeper at things. Trust your heart. Just good luck. And
okay. Well, thank you for your time, Kathy.
You're welcome. Thank you for your work on this.
It's my pleasure. No, thank you so much. The interviews are really critical, and it always takes bravery. And just to everyone listening at home, if there's anyone that would like to be interviewed, whether you don't have to be on camera, it can be audio, it can even be written as well, and it can be anonymous, any way you like. These interviews add so much to so many for a variety of different reasons. Just email me at avataruncovered@protonmail.com. And if anyone has any information as well that may help us as well, because we're getting deeper into uncovering more and more and taking some action as well on this, because I strongly believe that the lack of action, there has been some that have taken action, so thank you to those, mainly within who are ex-Scientologists like Kathy and Margie, and some others like Gail Lyons over the years. But I still, we strongly still need to take action, because there's people that are still being sucked into this group, and there's families that are being harmed, and people that are being harmed, people that are suffering mentally, psychologically, even suicidal. I have discovered more and more recently. So the more information that we have, the more clout we have in taking it to authorities and getting action, just if you can email us again, avataruncovered@protonmail.com. I know there's a lot of people that are worried and frightened, but we're all still alive, so we're trying to really break down that fear. So, and thank you everyone as well for listening, taking the time to listen, and for some of those of you that have provided so much support as well to all of this over the last couple of years. A few of you that really, this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for you as well. So thank you everyone for listening. Again, thank you for Kathy, and all have a great day wherever you are around the world. Bye for now. Bye.